2022 in terms of gaming was a roll of the dice. Variety-wise, it was phenomenal. AAA games like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok innovated its own respective genres. And indie games amazingly again came through with such unique titles that they broke into mainstream easily. We had some high rollers this year, but with the roll of a dice, it's RNG, and we unfortunately had a ton of random games fail to succeed. Oh, Nintendo this year, in my opinion, just became so mixed every single month. We truly didn't know which games were going to be great or just plain disappointing. While Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 were rightfully fantastic, literally everything else felt so strange. I loved the two Pokemon games this year, but even then, one was an experiment and then the other was a buggier version of said experiment. So this dice roll of a year led me to not really care for what came out, honestly. So with that mindset, I went back to previous years and handpicked titles I've been meaning to dive into. So 2022, in terms of gaming personally, didn't become this RNG gumball machine, but more of a handpicked charcuterie board of tasteful experiences. Looking back at the small list of games I've played this year, it becomes clear that the majority of them were very lonesome adventures. Meaning I didn't focus on too much multiplayer this year, but I gave myself time to explore these new worlds and come to terms with each one. Which is amazing to me, since this year in specific was possibly my greatest year socially. Not only did I move apartments into a much healthier environment, but plenty of new friends and experiences came as a result of that in only a several month span. And even when I was at said older apartment, I became so active with my beautiful friends in N10, not only joining their group as a member, but experiencing Boston with most of them and Daytona with my dog Lazy. It became the most compact year in terms of social adventures for me. So for that alone, I am grateful at the balance I've achieved with the busy real life and peaceful isolation in gaming. So with that being said, this is the quaint but important catalog of games I've played in 2022. Let's contradict everything I just said in the intro to talk about the most engaging co-op game I've ever played. It Takes Two created the best gaming experience for couples who love each other. So naturally I played it with my best friend JV. Playing It Takes Two with a witty friend who barely cares for the story in games is probably not the best recommended way to play through it, but I can confirm it will be the funniest way you encounter it. It Takes Two gives a careful perspective into a struggling marriage who slowly find their way back to love again. The game in its entirety will be you and your partner playing as May and Cody, who were slightly annoying at first, but somehow became genuine characters I was rooting for. It's mainly an adventure platformer where you solve puzzles and fight enemies, but what is most insane about this title is the massive amount of variety it tackles of different types of genres. Not only does it include tons of Mario Party-like minigames, but its exciting boss fights and even playing flying levels, it does it all extremely well. There was never a gameplay segment that didn't make sense to me or feel out of place. Every moment in It Takes Two was worth cherishing, and not just from the perfected controls or the well-made story, but the co-op journey you can have with your special somebody, or like me, your best friend. It Takes Two is as good as they say it is, even greater maybe, and that should be enough incentive to play. When Spider-Man Miles Morales finished, it left me in tears, being one of the only games to ever make me feel that type of way. With all the great elements it brought over from the first Insomniac Spider-Man game, Miles Morales was destined to be at least a very great game. But what this title had compared to the original was its fantastic relatability to the characters and its way of gripping you till the very end. While people have a great argument about this game feeling like DLC or an extension of the original Spider-Man, after playing through, I didn't feel that at all. Having 100% both games, I can say while I loved every single second of the original, Miles Morales, while being half the amount of time gameplay-wise, made me connect with it that much quicker. It's a beautiful, shorter experience, and the fact that it allowed me to feel so expressive when the credits rolled really says something. See, Miles is a younger teen. He's half black and Puerto Rican, which aided beautifully into the story. His background made Spider-Man as a series more culturally aware, which is how it should be, especially for an icon like Spider-Man. But Miles was younger, more in tune with his neighborhood and family, which is what Spider-Man is truly about to me. It's not just saving lives, it's also helping them. And that's exactly what Miles does with plenty of the game's missions and side quests. Not to mention the fantastic story, it's solely connected to family and friends, making the playthrough so personal. I didn't necessarily feel like Spider-Man throughout the game. I felt like a young teen named Miles earning the spot to be called Spider-Man. That is massive character growth in my opinion, and in such a short game, that's some type of achievement. All of this is just what makes up the core reasons of my love for this game and Miles Morales. There are plenty of smaller bullet points to add to it, like the easily repeatable soundtrack and the charming unique mechanics Miles brings as a new Spider-Man, specifically with his swinging animations and his style. And with the digestible, more compact combat experience, with less gadgets than the original, but more creative in its movement, Miles is more expressive with his moves compared to Peter Parker, who acts more efficient and experienced. I quite literally could talk hours about Miles Morales alone, which is why I never made a sole video on it yet. But I'll stop there and just finish with a great game. It's great. Would game again. Now I love web slinging through the sky, but I equally love the mechanics of the board. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 is one of the best remasters I've ever played easily. Not only is it both THPS 1 and 2 at its core, but it's better in every way imaginable. Graphics are realistic without it being muddy like in the Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, and the mechanics have been done so respectfully compared to the original that everything just feels refined and immaculate. See, I grew up on the Tony Hawk games, specifically Pro Skater 3, Pro Skater 4, Underground 1 and 2, American Wasteland Proving Ground, and God, even Tony Hawk Shred. Yeah. But for some reason, I completely skipped out on the original 1 and 2, so coming to the remaster and experiencing everything for the first time feels like this weird breath of the freshest air. Or should I say the sickest air, because in the game Tony Hawk you shred and you get sick air, and I'm never speaking again. This game surprisingly didn't rank as my top Tony Hawk game though, but it does come really close. Everything is just so fluid, and the arcadey gameplay loop is still so fresh in a world full of these immersive open world games. I never felt like I was wasting time or losing while playing. It was just a constant wave of this easygoing gameplay, making me feel like a great skater on my days off of work. I loved every second of my time with it, and honestly, it revitalized the world of skating games for me, making me interested in them again after about half a decade of inactivity. So for that reason alone, I can't really complain. I played through A Short Hike this year, and I even made a video on it, so as I obviously won't go in depth again, I can still confirm this game does it for me. It was the first game I played through when I moved into my current apartment right now, and we were stuck without Wi-Fi for quite a while. I already had A Short Hike downloaded onto my PS4, and it made the whole moving in process really relaxing afterwards. I don't think I would have discovered that without the lack of internet. We get so caught up in the fog that is social media that we forget to go offline and relax. Funnily enough, A Short Hike is kind of specifically that. You play as Claire, a bird who went on what basically is a summer vacation, and the whole story is just your goal of reaching the top of the mountain to get cell reception to call your mom. But the adventure there allows you to do a multitude of things, talking to and helping a handful of great animal characters, and really just basking in the glory of this surprisingly jam-packed island. It feels super good to glide around the mountain or race around the terrain trying to find the quickest route to certain places. Although it's not insanely popular right now in the grand scope of games, this is a must-have indie title for the exploration and Animal Crossing vibes alone. I mentioned when I moved into a new place and I had no Wi-Fi for a while. As a result of no internet, I finally started the juggernaut that is Persona 5. I love me some classic fantasy RPGs. I grew up on them, but I cry at the sight of the Japanese ones. I don't hate Japanese culture, I actually love it immensely, but when you go onto howlongtobeat.com and type in any JRPG and you're presented with a time that seems longer than the creation of a baby, it does something to you, man. But I had no Wi-Fi, so literally all I had was time, and Persona 5 is possibly the most engaging way to do this. I easily got 50 hours in and loved every second of it. Persona 5's character roster is one of my new personal favorites, giving me strong friendship vibes similar to One Piece. The dialogue, which is 70% of the game, actually interests me heavily, and I'm more than happy to read it all. diving deep into these fictional stories. Each new character presented feels like they have their own world to explore, and the areas set up for the game heighten that explorative craving. The randomness of buying a game console or going out on a date with the NPCs feels important to you, like you're living in some isekai where you decide what to do, except I hate isekai, so is anything I'm saying even true? This game breaks all boundaries for me. It's a genre and playstyle I've never thought I could commit to. It's a game I was too intimidated to boot up, and now I want it all in my mind at once. So I can promise a Persona 5 review coming soon, maybe 2027. Crayon Shin-chan is weird, and I love it. I don't even have much to say, especially since I did a bigger video on it recently, but the quirkiness of Shin-chan as a character, combined with the relaxing cycle of gameplay, made it just a great game to play around summertime. Shin-chan has had entries in its series already in the past, but this modern one really takes the cake for best Shin-chan game, period. It's just a fun time all around, and I can't really say much more than that. But I can talk about Attack of the Friday Monsters. It's the better Shin-chan game. That isn't a Shin-chan game, and possibly the best 3DS game I've ever played. Okay, Pokemon X will probably be number 1 for me in my book, but the intrigue I still have for Attack of the Friday Monsters has to mean something. The ambiance of this style of game is like every slice of life anime with the buzzing cicadas, the classic river alongside the towns, and the warm tones of colors that is painted onto this entire game. It's one of my top 3 games of 2022 almost easily, which is insane since the whole game is less than 4 hours long. I even played it on a car ride, which made it that much more nostalgic to me. It was just a random gem that started picking up traction around the 3DS eShop obsession, and I'm just thankful that I picked it up with no hesitation at all. You just stroll through a small town talking to these charming people that live there and try to learn more about why these giant monsters fight every Friday. But since it's from the perspective of a child, they never really make it clear if the monsters are real or fake, which adds to this game's childlike curiosity, and it's something I've never really seen done before. Not an impactful story, but a gem of a game that I try to talk about whenever I can, so if you're unsure, just play it. I highly recommend it. This wouldn't be a video without Pokemon Legends Arceus, one of the weirdest Pokemon games to date, but kind of one of the best in recent years. Legends Arceus is the first real attempt at an open world Pokemon game. They attempted alright. It ended up being Spacious Zone, so it's not an open world Pokemon game at all, but it's super fun mechanically. Arguably the most engaging Pokemon game I've played, since you can catch Pokemon without having to actually battle them. This mechanic alone made it rewarding and addictive to fill up my Pokédex, which I normally despise in any other game. Alongside its whole aesthetic of looking like a water painting, which I think will age better than we think, it's just great. And the story, or the concept at least, of the time where Pokemon and humans didn't fully connect yet, it's great to see how they tackle that, and these handwritten Pokédexes, or using materials to create your own Pokeballs, it's fantastic. All of these different versions of classic Pokemon is my favorite in the series yet, and the whole idea that you, the player, are from the future transferred into the past to show them a new wave of life, living with Pokemon is just great. It's kind of reminiscent of an isekai. Do I actually like isekai? Nah, never mind. I hate this game. Pokemon Beta and Alpha are Pokemon games that struggle to be Pokemon games, and yet the inner fanboy still loves them. Scarlet and Violet is actually a true open world Pokemon game, where you can adventure wherever the hell you want as long as you have the upgraded mobility to access these locations. I actually ended up skipping like 2 gyms and fighting stronger ones, so when I came back to the weaker ones later and sat there confused as to why my level 30 Gyarados was fighting level 18 gym Pokemon, I was kind of torn up a bit, but that's besides the point. Scarlet and Violet are rushed games in the series. That has phenomenal potential though, with its branching story elements. I love the classic gym badge playthrough, but I was also invested in the enemy team storyline and the Titan Pokemon storyline. While the actual gameplay segments of these story parts were fight, talk, more fight, more talk, the talking portions were actually pretty entertaining. While the fighting is surprisingly one of the weaker elements of the entire game for me, which absolutely sucks, especially since it's Pokemon, and that's my favorite part about it. But like in Arceus, I found myself catching more Pokemon than I normally do, and trying to discover some of the more region's opportunities rather than the battling itself like I do in every other mainline game. These have some good characters and surprisingly fresh Pokemon designs, like it's literally a dog made out of dough. What the hell? But every positive trait I can give Scarlet and Violet comes with 3 negative ones, so look at a review eventually. Just kill me now. We have come to the greatest game I have played in 2022. A game years old, but one that's impacted me in numerous ways. Celeste is the greatest indie game I've danced with and might be one of my all-time favorites. The way Celeste changes your scope of platformers is beyond this earth, and just challenging stages alongside the overdramatic yet relatable story sets a new standard for how I take in games. Just speaking the word Celeste allows for this pressing entrance into my mind, making me think about everything I've endured and every lesson I learned. Visually, the vibrance of Celeste is great. The colors and the use of terrain make each level its own personality-filled planet. The mechanics of your character and how you tackle the world never feel impossible, but never gives you this easy route. It's constantly testing what you've learned, and it gives you a discipline you never realized you had. Celeste also has one of the greatest soundtracks in any game, which is why you hear it in almost every gaming YouTuber videos. It mixes so many emotions, making you feel inspirational at times, ready to take on anything, but can also make you feel silent and feeling vulnerable in only a short moment. Celeste is everything a challenging platformer wants to be, which is why it's a pioneer in this indie landscape. It constantly refreshes in my mind even months and months after my playthrough, and each day since, I've thought about turning it back on just to replay it. Celeste can empower you and somehow make you feel alright even though it's difficult. It is for sure a game to take notes from, not just from design perspective, but with life too. I absolutely love Celeste, and personally, it is my favorite game of the year. Thank you for watching. This was Rox. Peace and love. See ya.